Yo, ho, 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 ho. What up, Don Mafia? Welcome to yet another edition of the Don Mafia Report. Due to popular demand, I brought back the Fan v Fan series, especially since last week was so popular with Dougley Durong and TD Finstock for the preview for the Week 2 matchup against the Dolphins. I'm doing the exact same thing this week, however, with my good friend Trent, who runs a Rams channel called Rams Talk. We get into a very, very informative conversation. I think that you guys are going to enjoy it, so certainly stay tuned. Before I dive into it, I need to give some giant shout outs to my most recent Patreon contributors, and that is my dude Jesse with a $5 donation per month, and then Grant with a $10 donation per month. Now, Don Mafia, obviously, y'all know the best way to support my channel is simply by smashing the out of that like button, but say you ever want to go the extra mile, Patreon is the way to do it, and you can find that link in my description. And so one last announcement as well, ladies and gentlemen, just as a reminder, me and former safety of the Buffalo Bills, Aaron Williams, we started our own podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we have a Bills-Rams preview live on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever the hell you listen to podcasts. It is there. I will also put the links right in my description in case you just haven't gotten enough Bills and Rams preview content throughout the week. I really hope you enjoy. Besides that, Down Mafia, let's dive into this juiciness. Yo, Don Mafia. Welcome to a very special edition of the Don Mafia Report. Last week, we had a couple of Dolphins fans on, and it was an absolute hit. So I figured since the Bills finally have a challenge this week, I figured it made sense to bring on a Rams fan, my very good friend, Trent from the LA Rams Talk. Trent, what's going on?
Hey, just living in Rams paradise here. I'm really glad that we connected on Fan to Fan, and I'm glad to shoot the shit with you regarding this week's matchup, because I mean this is, aside from I think the Chiefs Ravens game this week, like this is the game of the week. So yeah, really looking forward to get some Bills intel, so I at least know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, man, for sure. It's funny too, because I feel like our teams are in similar situations, and you and I were chatting about this offline before we hit record, but while the media seems to think that we might be for real, they're always going to throw out that excuse being like, well, who do they play? And so for the Bills situation, obviously, and so we had the New York Jets, which is most likely the worst team in football at this point, and then the Miami Dolphins. And then with the Rams, y'all ended up playing the Cowboys, who are normally just an 8-8 team by default regardless. and then the Philadelphia Eagles, where I have seen better offensive lines during high school JV teams. So I feel like there's a lot to prove for both teams going into Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, like, and I'll be honest with you, I think it's a little bit more for the Bills and the Rams in terms of the opponents, because, I mean, the Jets are just a complete dumpster fire of an organization and a team. Mm-hmm. And then the Dolphins I actually kind of had as a dark horse coming into the season, but, you know, like looking at their, you know, they're still missing a lot. And also you look at the score, I watched the game last week, and, you know, because you guys are missing your linebackers, that really kind of, I think, kept the game closer than normal. But, you know, the Rams, I mean, Dallas still has like a stacked roster. In Philly, when you say they have a terrible offensive line, it's like on paper, their offensive line is really good. They still have Jason Peters, Jason Kelsey. Lane Johnson came back against the Rams. They didn't allow a sack against the Rams. But, I mean, that's because Carson Wentz was getting rid of the ball very quickly. Mm-hmm. But I think, you know, the Philly offensive line is better than I think we saw. But you are right. The Rams, I feel, have been really disrespected ever since they lost in the Super Bowl and scored 3 points. I think a lot of people like really jumped off the Rams bandwagon. Yeah. And last year, you know, they missed the playoffs. They were 9-7. They were one missed kick against the Seahawks from like being a playoff team and the Seahawks not making the playoffs. But yet, the whole narrative is like the Rams are going to be 5-11 this year. And just, I mean, we still have McVay and Goff and receivers and Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Like, I don't know where people are pulling this out of their ass. And I think it's maybe probably with the Bills too. But it's like, I think a lot of analysts are just lazy. You know, they look at like They just look at like the superficial stuff. Like for the Rams, oh, you lost Gurley and Brandon Cooks, you guys aren't good anymore. And it's like, well, if you watch the Rams last year, those guys did nothing. So
Yeah.
like, what are we really losing? So I think it's just a laziness about, like being analytical about like what our teams are really about. And, like we haven't had, prior to coming to LA, the Rams really, in St. Louis, they were just crap forever. And for the Bills, up until a couple of years ago, you guys weren't
Same situation.
Same situation,
Yeah.
So it's like, I think you just have to we have to be a little more consistent with our play over like several years. And then you kind of like get thought of as that, like a upper echelon team. And I look at the Bills roster and the organization and the coaching staff, and I'm like, you guys are like, really built something very strong. You guys are definitely ascending. So,
and so it's about time, man. And so it's about time. And so I'm not going to lie to you, like being a Bills fan, I'm 29 years old. So I mean, like the majority of my life, like during those Super Bowl years, like I was an infant at that point. So, I mean, I really didn't get to enjoy it as much as I am right now, like now that we actually have a competent coaching staff. But all right. So with that being said, obviously Sunday, McVay is going to the East Coast. I did hear an interesting stat. It might have been from you, or it might have just been from ESPN or something like that, that McVay is 7-0 when he goes to the East Coast at 1:00 games.
He's 5-0.
5-0 going into it. Okay. Yeah. So when you look at the Bills roster, right, what concerns you the most from a Rams fan's perspective?
Okay, well, so for the Rams offense, if I'm looking at the Bills defense, it's definitely your pass rush, because last year the Rams offensive line was just like second worst in all of football. We had a lot of injuries and turnover, so that was to be expected. So this year they wouldn't be so bad, but still I'm not going to, I won't believe that they're back until I see it. So I'm still concerned about Jerry Hughes and Trent Murphy and Ed Oliver, right? Also Trey White. I mean, really, like at every level, I look at every level of your defense. I'm like, there are legit dudes there. So that would be my concern there, is basically giving Goff enough time. If Goff has enough time, you'll see what you saw the last 2 weeks, like just super efficient, effective and for offensively, it's, okay, let's just assume Ramsey's on Diggs, right? Then it's matching up against Beasley and Brown. So because those guys aren't slouches. So I think it's really how is their secondary guys going to play. And then also your offensive line, I know is like a solid offensive line, but I don't look at it as like,
it's not elite by any means.
No. And so I'm not too worried about AD there, but the other guys need to step up. And Josh Allen, listen, Josh Allen, a 300-yard game, 400-yard game, looked really good, and he's mobile, he can run. So like you got to, like, I'm concerned about Josh. Okay, there's pretty much like at every personnel grouping, maybe with the exception of tight end, that I'm like going, oh damn, we have to account for that, right? Like you looked at Dallas and you're like, okay, their secondary is definitely a weakness. You look at Philly and you think, okay, they're I don't know, like I don't even know what it was with Philly's weakness. Like I think they were like kind of solid still, even though they sucked this year. You kind of look all around. Maybe their wide receivers aren't great, but I with Buffalo, it's just so well rounded. I don't know if there's really like a weakness, and I think what the Rams will do on defense, what Coach Staley said, defensive coordinators, he wants to – Josh Allen still, I think, has to prove it, really. You know what I mean? So, like, he wants to make things as stressful for him. He wants to make his processing of what he's seeing as, like, stressful and chaotic and complicated to kind of thwart him and take away – because he's great at, like, what Josh Allen sees pre-snap is not what he sees post-snap.
Yeah, for sure.
And one side of the defense might be man, the other side might be zone. So it's giving him all these looks and making him actually have to compute and not just be like, oh, Dolphins, boom. Oh, Jets, boom. So exactly. What about you? Like, how do you flip that for the Rams? Like, what are areas of concern you see for the Rams?
Yeah, man. So It really comes down to from the defensive side of things for the Buffalo Bills. Last week, we were missing out on two of our biggest playmakers for our defense, and that was Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds. So many people talk about our secondary, but it's funny. When you watch any tape from any previous Bills game where we were either missing Edmonds or Milano, we struggled tremendously defensively. Last week, Miami actually had a really good offensive game last week. No one talks about it because Josh Allen outshined Fitzpatrick, but Fitzpatrick destroyed the middle of the field with his tight end, Gesicki. So my biggest concern is because both Milano and Edmonds are still listed as questionable on Sunday, that both of them will be out. And then once you look at the fact that Higbee, he reached the end zone 3 times last week, and he ended up racking like 130, 140 yards or something. I mean, say that I'm McVay, then I'm doing the exact same damn thing. And that on top of that, and then last week, Levi Wallace, our CB2, he struggles tremendously in man coverage. There was a time where Fitzpatrick targeted Levi Wallace like 7 times in a row and beat him every single time. So if I'm McVay and say that we have the same defensive roster out there during week 1, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing a replica of what the Dolphins did, but the Rams have a scarier offense than the Miami Dolphins. So, I mean, that's my biggest concern from the Bills defensively. I am crossing my fingers that Edmonds and Milano are there. As far as the offensive rate of this goes down, is I'm afraid that Josh Allen still has that chip on his shoulder with Jalen Ramsey. And like you would think that he's going to try and stay away from him and still target Diggs because, I mean, he wants to rub it in his face. He wants to beat him the second time in his career. I'm afraid that he's going to test him a little too much. And then Ramsey's going to punish him. And then, of course, Donald. I mean, honestly, like I've seen videos of that guy like throwing around 300-pound grown men like rag dolls, right? And as far as our offensive line, like I said, they're not elite by any stretch of the imagination. We really didn't add many pieces to it during this offseason. And I really don't know an offensive lineman who has had the best of Donald. So, I mean, I'm like really concerned about y'all's defense going up against our offense, but I'm just really hoping that Beasley and Brown will have a good game. It's funny. Let me pivot and ask you a question as well, because when it comes to the Rams, like when you hear about their secondary, there's just one name that dominates it, and that's Jalen Ramsey. How would you rank the rest of your secondary, like your safety core, your CB2? Would you say that they are great complements to Ramsey, or would you say that there's a weakness in there and Ramsey's just like the best bright spot of your secondary right there?
Okay, so I'd say their entire secondary is top 5 in NFL, and even Aqib Talib came out with like his power rankings of secondaries, and he had Rams at top 5 or even top 3. So that was the secondary for the Rams is actually a strength of their team, and they have like one other name that you probably are familiar with. It's their safety, John Johnson.
Of course.
Yeah, so he missed pretty much all of last year with a shoulder injury. So he's back this year. He never played with Jalen when Jalen came over last year. So he's got the green dot, so he's calling the defensive plays. Our second round pick last year, Taylor Rapp, who played very well last year, he basically he doesn't start anymore because our 6th round pick, Jordan Fuller out of Ohio State, like just was one of those camp guys that just took off, and Rapp was injured during camp and just supplanted him, just beat him out. And Rapp now is like healthy and still a great player for them. But he, like Jordan Fuller, had 71 snaps against that game, the Dallas game. I don't know if you remember when it was like a 4th down and CeeDee Lamb did that crossing over the middle, and Jordan Fuller came in and made that open field tackle and stopped him. And that was like his first game as an NFL pro. And he's the only player in NFL history through the first 2 games he's like 3rd in tackles through his first 2 career games in the history of the NFL. So he's come on, and we still have Taylor Rapp there. So even if we lost Jordan Fuller, we're still solid now in terms of DB. So we lost Nickel Roby Coleman, our slot corner, but we slid Troy Hill there. Troy Hill, the 2 guys I'm going to talk about were UDFAs. but Troy Hill's been on the Rams for like 7 years. He last year, when he came in for Marcus Peters after that trade, he pretty much was like a top 20 rated cornerback by Pro Football Focus. And then he got injured with 3 games to go, and another UDFA that the Rams had for a year at that point, Darius Williams, came in and had 3 interceptions in like the last 3 games. And Darius Williams had an interception last week against Philly when they were driving down and Wentz threw that interception in the end zone. And everyone was talking about Wentz, what a terrible read and everything. And they talked to Darius Williams after the game, and he's like, yeah, we practice against the plays that each of their receivers do most of the time. So we practice, and he's like, I knew that play was coming. I knew when I saw that receiver that he was going to do a deep post into the end zone. And so I knew it was coming, and I just jumped it. So their cornerbacks, their safeties, their secondary is awesome. So you have Ramsey, but the thing is they can like switch and put everyone so versatile. They can put everyone everywhere. And keep this in mind. The Rams have not allowed a receiving touchdown to either a wide receiver or a tight end at all this season. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, none of those guys caught a touchdown against the Rams. So their secondary is pretty much, they play off in zone, so they allow a lot of underneath stuff, but there's no big plays given at all. So that's the thing with Buffalo, I think is going to be very interesting, is do the Rams do that same thing? Do they let Beasley work underneath, John Brown, because John Brown's going to be Smoke's going to be burning, Diggs has got elite speed. So are they going to just try and keep them in front and have them nickel and dime, and then you throw in some Singletary? And that's the other teams are always kind of going down the field, but were stopped eventually, never really scored the touchdown. So so the secondary, I think, that's actually a very good, well, we don't know because you guys are really fast, but we did pretty well against the Amari, Gallup, and CD. So I'm hopeful that they can still bring it this week. And you mentioned Levi Wallace, and I think on the flip side, we have Van Jefferson and Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. Whoever is going to be matched up on Levi Wallace, I think, is what the Rams are going to exploit. Now, what have you seen from Josh Allen, though? What is he doing different this year? And I know you're going against some weaker secondaries, but is it just this, everyone's on the same page? Diggs is just clicked.
Yeah. And so I think it's a variety of reasons. Number one, Josh Allen has finally developed touch, right? You look at his tape from 2019 and 2020, there was a perfect situation where Beasley ran a post route. And in 2019, Josh would have thrown a fastball to him, just a laser and stuff like that. And then that either could have translated into an incompletion, a wildly missed throw, or whatever. But now Josh Allen, he's taking a little speed off of the ball, and he's finally developing touch. Hence why last year he maybe connected on 1 or 2 deep balls, and he already has 4 or 5 already this season just by the touch that he's already been able to do. And then really, man, it's Diggs. It is Stephon Diggs, man. He's the type of receiver that your quarterback doesn't need to throw a perfect throw, right to the numbers in order for him to catch it. He's going to make a quarterback look good. And I think with that addition moving into it, it opens up the field for Josh Allen, because defenses for the most part have been obsessed with trying to cover Diggs. And then it gives a whole bunch of opportunities for Cole Beasley and John Brown and even Devin Singletary, who I think is going to have a pretty big game against you guys on Sunday. But that's really what I've seen from Josh Allen. Speaking of Singletary, I am under the impression that the Bills are going to shy away from the air attack on Sunday. I think if I was Brian Dable and I was Sean McDermott, then what I'm doing is I'm looking at the game right at the week 2 game and the week 1 game with what Zeke did during week 1. I'm pretty sure he was over 100 yards on the ground, right? Zeke, week 1?
I can't remember if he was over 100 yards on the ground, but he had over 100 yards all purpose.
All purpose. And then the same with Miles Sanders for Philly.
Miles Sanders was 90 some yards on the ground, but if you combine Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, and then Zeke and Tony Pollard, over 100 yards for the combos, and some catches out of the backfield. So they both really I was watching that Eagles game, and I was the Rams are giving up 5 yards of play on the ground every time. If I'm the Eagles, I would just run,
just run the ball,
run,
Yeah.
run. But it's all, the ground game has also been that's been a blemish for the Rams this year.
Yeah.
Going like facing the ground game. And so I remember seeing your video. You were talking about how like the Bills' identity for so long had been like the ground game, and then Allen with the just also running, but also kind of the short yardage. But that seems to have like flipped.
Yeah, it's flip-flopped.
And so how do you see that playing out now? I mean, I think that is what the Bills should do, is really attack the Rams' run defense.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that, now with Zach Moss being out,
Yeah.
and Devin Singletary kind of really being the every down guy, unless TJ Yeldon is, I'm sure he'll get a couple carries too, but like, how does that now kind of figure with the loss of Zach Moss?
Yeah. And so it's crazy, man, because last week, and so I thought that the Bills were going to just be a run the damn ball type offense during the Dolphins. But I mean, I was completely wrong, right? And the Bills absolutely attacked that secondary. And honestly, like really on paper, say that Byron Jones didn't go down during week 2, then I think it might have been a different game. But when it comes down to our running back situation, I have a lot of confidence in Singletary. I really think that we're going to attack that run defense. I really, really do. And then so many people think about, hey, Zach Moss is out of the game, and that's definitely a killer. But I mean, we also have a guy that lines up under center named Josh Allen, who has been known to be able to run against defenses and be successful as long as he can hold on to the ball. I believe he fumbled the ball twice during the Jets, and he still ended up winning. As long as he keeps ball security, definitely expect a lot of runs from Devin Singletary and a lot of designed quarterback runs by Josh Allen, especially because I think that he's going to spend a lot of time scrambling out of the pocket because of your good friend Aaron Donald. So, I mean, I think that that's going to be a situation when it comes down to it. So, really, just to wrap this up, I want to get into final score predictions. So, let's go ahead and start off. What do you think the final score is going to be on Sunday?
I think it's going to be 33-24 Rams.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this because I'm going with the stat that you start out with, the 5-0. Rams are 5-0 under McVay when they travel to East Coast. But they also average over 30 points a game in those contests. And I think that if my keys for the Rams on offense really are and why they've played so well is that Goff gets the ball out. The offensive line doesn't have to block long. So if they get the running game going, which they're third in yards this year, which is crazy for the Rams, so they're running the ball, which opens up play action. You all know how Goff and the Rams are with play action, the pre-snap, post-snap motion, getting the ball out quickly. If the Rams can do that, they will put points up on the board. And if they're not, so like if he's getting sacked, if he's holding on to the ball too long, if the running game just can't go anywhere, then I feel like it'll be under what I just said. But I think 33-24 is the way. And how's your by the way? How's your kicker? Who's your kicker?
His name is Tyler Bass. He is a rookie. No, definitely not Norwood.
Sorry, Bills fans.
Definitely not Norwood. His name is Tyler Bass. He comes from a D2 school. He has a hell of a leg. Week 1 was kind of a struggle for him. He ended up missing a field goal, which is right in my opinion. And so I do think that field goal was good, but apparently it's not a reviewable play, which is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he's definitely been giving me a lot of anxiety. But here's my final score. So I have the Bills winning 28-27. And I have the Bills winning on a 45-yard field goal from Tyler Bass, full redemption. It's going to be a nail biter. It's going to be a nail biter. Oh, yeah. And so I'm getting specific.
Yeah,
so,
that is detailed.
Exactly. A very, very detailed prediction. And say that it happens, and wow, holy hell. So then I'm going to Vegas.
Okay. And I'm glad we're facing you, though, like in September. It's supposed to be very warm. I don't think super windy or terrible that way. So, I mean, that's field goals could be playing a huge a huge part in it. No Bills fans. I mean, the Rams really lucked out with not going to Philly, not seeing the Philly fans, not seeing the Bills fans.
Yeah.
So the Rams really lucked out on that front. So that'll be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, hey, Dom Mafia, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another edition of Fan v Fan. Do me a favor and leave a comment of what you think is going to be the final score for this game. I am going to be linking Trent's channel in my description. So definitely go on over there. He dropped a preview yesterday. Was that right, Trent?
That's right. That's right.
Got
And
it.
real quick, one last thing. I just want to give a shout out to Pittsford, New York, right outside of Rochester, which is close to Buffalo. Anyway, spent some time there in my youth. Shout out to Pittsburgh.
Shout out to Pittsburgh. Well, yeah, Dom Mafia, once again, thank you once again for tuning in. Trent, thank you so much for joining me today with Fan v Fan. And Dom Mafia, right before I let you go, and I need you to always remember, let's go Buffa.
Rams.
Oh, my God.